The one and only Andy Lee. Will this be the end of Joseph Parker?
As soon as the first round, he sits on the stool and he knows it's gonna. I said, Joe, it's gonna be a long night.
It's all over. Joe Joyce by knockout.
And I said to him after that, if you want to do this, you really have to change. It's dangerous. If he wants to stand and hold his feet, then it's very dangerous. Things go to plan. He'll beat Daniel Dubois. That'll be the icing on the cake. What can Lewis really do? I don't really see how he can beat how he beats Paddy. I just know how hard Paddy punches.
Tyson Fury has announced he is retiring from boxing.
There's a great story there, you know, premature birth to being a heavyweight champion of the world.
Hasn't boxed Anthony Joshua.
To be honest with you, do you really want to see it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I do.
So it is 8:40 a.m. We are here in the lovely city of Dublin because we're off to go and see Joseph Parker, Andy Lee and Paddy Donovan in the gym. So looking forward to that. Paddy Donovan and Joseph Parker got some big fights coming up. Always good to see Andy Lee in the lab. So looking forward to catching up with him and seeing how he's getting on. I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Andy Lee. We're here in the sort of sunny Dublin. I don't want to give it away too much. It's been raining the whole time. But how are you, Andy? You've brightened up my day.
Good, Rob. Thank you very much for coming.
Nice to see you. Always a pleasure to be over in Dublin, although different gym than when I came 5 years ago. But nice little setup that you've got here.
This is the Ballybrack Amateur Boxing Club. It's been here for quite a number of years. I think it was 2021 we moved out to this area where I had been in the city centre of Dublin, and lucky enough to find this gym, and people are good enough to allow us to use it. It has everything you need. There's nothing special here, but it has everything you need.
You just look around the walls and there's kind of a who's who of Irish boxing history. I think
Irish Olympians, yeah. Anybody who got a medal in the Olympics for Ireland is on the wall.
There's also a certain Andy Lee and a couple of posters as well, looking very, very young and very, very full of energy and full of life there, Andy.
I know, yeah. I know. The years have not been kind, but it's all right. I'm still alive.
You are still alive, and good to see you being so busy as well as a boxing trainer. I remember I mentioned to you before we got started today, I remember speaking to you when you just made the decision to be a boxing coach, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mentioned to you before, I sort of felt like not reluctant, but it wasn't necessarily something that you were, I mean, maybe you can enlighten us, whether it's something that you were always planning on doing, or if it's something that's just sort of developed, I suppose.
I think it's developed. I think, I don't know. When I retired, I was happy to be retired and just doing nothing really, just enjoyed doing nothing for a while. And as you know, I saw Paddy, and then that kind of brought me back in. I thought, oh, this kid's good. If there was somebody to train, it would be him. And then I kind of, without even considering where it would lead to or what would happen, the ball started rolling, and Top Rank were interested. Once I spoke to them about Paddy, they were interested, and one thing led to another. And what I realised, good work leads to more work. You know, you do one thing, you do a good job here and there, you keep working every day. And work leads to work. So it really picked up. But I'm very, very lucky with my, because I had such a career myself that I was so well connected within boxing anyway, and if I can say well respected, that I had some, my relationship with Tyson, which opened a lot of doors as well for me, and probably put me ahead of where I should have been starting off as a novice coach, really.
How do you feel that you're different now, and how do you feel you've progressed as a coach since you started?
I think just you're doing something every day, you're bound to get better at it. I don't know if I'm more knowledgeable now, but I've definitely learned a lot in the few years in terms of experience, big fights, pressure fights. And just conducting yourself and handling yourself in those situations. I don't think maybe what I teach or what I've wanted to teach I don't think it's changed much. I think in those years, I think I've always had a good idea how people should box or what they can do to improve. But I definitely think I've improved with being a cornerman, which is different from being a trainer.
Just expand on that. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, somebody who, of course, one of the big influences in your life, Emmanuel Stewart, was notorious for being both, a boxing coach, but also somebody who was fantastic and really earned their money on the night in the corner. Explain to people the difference, I suppose, in skill set needed for the both.
Well, I always use the analogy, and I probably took this from Adam Booth, but it's like the horse trainer and the jockey, because the trainer will get the horse ready and fit and diet and everything else and train him, but it takes a jockey to ride him and coach him through a race. And it's similar with boxing coaches. You can train them to get them fit and sharp and technically good and everything else, but then you need to be able to guide them through a fight. And having been a boxer myself, I think that's where that's a huge benefit to me from being in the ring myself, knowing what it's like, knowing how you feel, and knowing how the fighters feel. And you got to know your fighters. Like Emmanuel would be in my corner, and he could read my mind. He knew exactly how I was feeling because we were so close. If I sat down on the stool after a round, and I felt I was in with a, maybe he could just see it, but maybe it wasn't. But he would say to me, "Okay, yeah, just box this guy. Use your jab. You're boxing well. You're winning the round." And just keep it like that for now. And that's how I was feeling, feeling in the fight. Or if I went back and he said, okay, just take it easy in this round or two. Try to conserve your energy, whatever it might be. But if he said to me, sorry, pick it up now, he's ready to go. And even if I didn't think, I had the trust in him where even if I didn't believe that, he said to me, if he'd say to me, pick it up now, he's ready to go, I would go out there and pick it up. And usually, more often than not, we'll get a stoppage or a knockout.
You mentioned that kind of closeness, and it often is the case between boxer and fighter. It's such a raw sport where it's so dangerous that you have to have that closeness and trust together. You kind of seem to me I know that a lot of fighters have inquired for your services over recent years, and for one reason or another it hasn't necessarily worked with you. How important is it for you to, I guess, some coaches who you speak to talk about, having too many people in the gym, you're not always able to give the right time to each person. Is that one of the reasons why you've kept your stable still relatively small over the years, to really try and get that closeness and that relationship?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons. That being one of the main ones is that when you coach a fighter, his life's in your hands. And you make every decision, like it's a big responsibility. You have to make every decision for them. The fighter doesn't need responsibility. They just need to turn up and train and be told what to do and do it. Their job is to do it. And that's the hardest job, but probably the second hardest job is making a decision of how hard they train, what kind of training they do, who they spar with, organising that, how much media do they do, when do they do the media. All of these decisions, making weight, when to make the weight. It's a minefield, and it's when you're a fighter you don't appreciate it, because I never did. But there is a lot involved in it. So then also there's the time in the gym and in the ring, and developing the fighters and giving them the time that they need to just practice what they need to do and to teach them what they need. And then there's also the personality of a fighter. You have to enjoy being around. You're spending a lot of time and energy. I had 3 young kids, and for me to leave them to be with you got to be worth it. You know what I mean? This personality is a big thing. Time and energy is the most valuable asset we have in the world and in life. And for me to spend it with a fighter who I don't really like, nothing's going to compensate for that, especially when I could be spending it at home with the children or doing something for myself. Being a boxing coach, you're serving a lot of people constantly. You're serving them, thinking about them, taking the gloves off, wrapping their hands, babying them, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? It's a lot. So that's the reason why. But if the fighter was right, and again all those things fell into place, then I would coach somebody else. Yeah.
You mentioned there about time, and that's something that I've heard Adam Booth talk about in the past. And your time is the most precious thing for you. If you're going to give somebody that, it have to be worth it. Words to that effect. I'm sure you'll know better.
Exact same what I just said. Yeah.
we spoke about Manny as well. You know, two brilliant coaches in different countries and in their own right, of course. How much in your role as coach now do you still take little bits? I mean, obviously having the relationship you had certainly with Emmanuel, it's kind of ingrained into kind of who you are. But do you still kind of take little bits and think back to how Adam and Emmanuel used to do things?
Yeah, definitely. Adam was great, but when I went to him, just great boxing mind, and a maverick, someone who did stuff in his own way, never did it because that was the traditional way of doing it. And when you'd ask him why he did things a certain way, he'd explain it to you and make you believe in it. But yeah, very, very fortunate in my career to work with some of the best coaches who were around at the time. Obviously, probably the greatest of all time, Emmanuel, and Adam, who's a phenomenal coach. I still think is the best coach out there. Not to mention that, Joey Gamache, Sugar Hill, and as an amateur with Zori Antioch, Billy Walsh, Nicholas Cruz Hernandez, and then the Repton Amateur Boxing Club, St. Francis Amateur Boxing Club. So a wonderful education. And then your own fighting, and what you learn yourself. So a wonderful education. And but yeah, with Emmanuel, it's ingrained in your personality. As I said before, from everything from like doing your laundry and how you do that to how you cook your eggs every morning. That's the type of influence he had on me.
One of the kind of little diversion, you mentioned cooking eggs in the morning. I've spoken to you in the past that you can be quite hands-on sometimes in the camp, but you obviously got George Lockhart and other experts around nowadays. What's your cooking like now? No,
the cooking's still good, but not for the lads. So that's like if before, when we were camp with Joe, and I'd be like, I'm telling you, baby and doing things. I'd be cooking for the boys up in the morning, have all the breakfast ready, all ready to go, back from the gym, snacks ready, blah, blah, blah. And it was just, George is an expert at that job. Like, I was just making it up, but I knew what to cook for my own career and what they needed. And Joe had one of his best performances, Cesaro too, when I cooked for him. But George is just different level. George is the best in the game, I believe. And to have him working with Paddy and Joseph, it's just brought them on. It's just bringing them on so much. Their energy they have, the strength and conditioning as well, the workouts they do, is taking their fitness to the next level. And that's why Joe's coincided with Joe working with George, and you've seen the uptake in his performances since that time, because Joe's fit enough now to do the training that he needs to be able to do the training that I wanted him to do and fight like I wanted to do. He's fit enough now, and that's down to the work George has done, and Joseph. Joe is too humble, as you know. Joe works extremely hard. He's very determined, and he's got a great mindset. So yeah, George is a big benefit to me, and my success, his success is my success, and my success is his success.
People often talk, I mean, you mentioned it earlier about improving fighters, and I think a great example of that is Joseph Parker. I mentioned to him earlier, he's arguably, put maybe Mr. Usyk to one side for one moment, the form fighter in the heavyweight division. He had those terrific win over Simon Keane, looked spectacular in that, and then obviously the big wins over Deontay Wilder and Zhilei Zhang. I remember speaking to you many years ago when you started as a boxing coach and working with Paddy. I remember you saying, I'll be judged based on kind of how Paddy does. You've taken him from point A to point B, but with the work that Joe has done recently, you must be immensely proud of the improvements that he's made. And, while you mentioned that Joe's very humble, you're also very humble yourself, something that you must be proud of, the work that you've put into him over a period of time.
He's changed his career and changed his life, and it's been a team effort. I've mentioned George Lockhart and Joseph and myself, and we're a three-man team, and we work hand in hand. George doesn't do a session without me knowing what he's doing. I don't do sessions without George knowing what he's doing. So we work in sync, and you'd be surprised how many of these conditioners and coaches don't even talk to each other and don't even know what they're doing, what the afternoon session is for the fight or whatever it is. But yeah, he's changed his career, and he's got 2 signature wins that will stand the test of time. You know what I mean? Whenever he retires, he can look back and say, I beat Deontay Wilder, I beat Zhilei Zhang, who at the time was on top of the game. And things go to plan. He'll beat Daniel Dubois, and that'll be the icing on the cake, right? The cherry on the cake. But when we put him with Wilder, you train hard, you want to win, and you always say to yourself, you know, when you win, this is going to be unbelievable. It's going to be so good, you know. But as soon as the fight's over, you're thinking, when's the next fight? When's the next? No, you know, whatever. Same with Zhang. You put all that expectation on it, and then as soon as it's over, come on, when's the next fight? And it'll be the same with this one. It'll be the same. He'll win it. Hopefully, he'll win it, and then we'll be looking for the next fight.
Before we talk about Daniel, I mentioned there about the big wins that Joe's had, but it's not been completely smooth sailing. You had the Joe Joyce fight, you had the Jack Massey fight, which wasn't Joe's best night either, admittedly in a win. What did you learn about Joe? What did Joe have to do to really put him in a position to have those great wins on the back of that? Because there was a lot of people who were looking at Joseph on the back of the Joe Joyce performance, wondering whether or not he had anything left. Would this be the end of Joseph Parker? And obviously fast forward a couple of years later and he's in arguably the best position he's been in.
Well, the Joe Joyce fight was a back and forth fight, which he lost in the 11th round. It was a great fight. It was a very entertaining fight. They both put a lot into it. You know, it wasn't like a one-sided beatdown. I think Joe realised, like, we had some tough words after the Massey fight. Like, Joe was sick going into the Joyce fight. And I was talking about learning for myself. If a fighter is ever sick, no matter if it's the day of the fight, day before the fight, pull him out. It's never worth it. Because Joe hadn't fought in so long, and the Joyce fight had been rearranged 3 or 4 times. He gets sick the week of the fight, and well, maybe just a bit longer than a week before the fight, and you're hoping that it's clear, that he gets over it, knowing that it won't affect him. You're resting him, letting him rest, not doing anything, and then as soon as the first round, he sits on the stool, and you know it's gonna. I said, Joe, it's gonna be a long night. I learned it, and I'll tell this to any coach, any fighter: if you're sick, pull out. No matter how big the fight is, no matter what you're getting paid, it's never worth taking a loss. It's never worth it. It's never worth going into the ring and not doing yourself justice, because a fight lasts forever in the memories of people, and it's on your record forever, and people can look it up and see online or watch it on YouTube and see that performance. I should have knew that from my own career as a boxer. Spoke to Joe, and Joe was, I want to fight, I want to take the fight, we're not pulling out. And being a probably inexperienced coach at that time, I allowed the fight to go ahead, and what happened. And after that loss, the Massey fight, which came 6 months later, it's after loss you're always going to be hesitant, and I don't think Joe was in a pretty good place at the time. And I said to him after that, we have to, if you want to do this, you really have to change. So he started to work with George Lockhart after that fight. He moved his camp from Morecambe to England, from Morecambe to Ireland, and we started to work. And I said, don't worry about big money fights. Fight as much as you can, as many times as you can, and we'll let the money worry about itself. And that's what we did, and we got fights, and then he won. They picked up, Australia, Keane, and then they got the big fight with Wild. So that's the way it's been. But yeah, I forget the question.
That's okay.
That's a story of That's a story of how we got to where we are now. But it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work, and enjoyable, all fun, great times. To be so successful, it's always good, but it won't mean to win this one. As I've said before, putting the same pressure on it, but to win this one will be nice because it's world title.
Joe's seemingly been around forever. I spoke to him earlier on. I think the first time I spoke to him was before he boxed Carlos Takam, which is a long time ago now, many pounds and inches on the hairline now. Where does Daniel Dubois sit with regards to danger? Obviously, he's a man in form himself. We've seen those 3 big wins that he's picked up since that loss to Alexander Usyk. He's a man in the kind of the physical prime of his career. How dangerous of a fight is this for Joseph?
It's dangerous. If it's as dangerous as you make it. If he wants to stand and trade, and not even trade with Dubois, but if he wants to stand and hold his feet, then it's very dangerous. If he's smart and boxes the way he can, uses his experience and his cleverness, it's less dangerous. Still a dangerous fight, but it's less dangerous. And he, Dubois, yeah. See, the great thing about Joe, with the experience he has, is that recently he's fought Deontay Wilder. Dubois is not as big as puncher as Wilder or Zhang. Zhang's arguably a bigger puncher than Wilder, and he's been in with those two. The physique of Dubois, he's not bigger than Zhang. You know, he's not as fast as Wilder. So Joe's faced all these things that Dubois has recently, but not to the same extent. You know what I mean? So yeah, like that's the great thing for Joe. That he's been in there with these big punches. He's been in there with these speedsters. He's been in there with southpaws. All of them probably do what Dubois does, but to a better extent. So that's where his experience comes into play. And yeah, we know it's a hard fight. Dubois is a tough man. He's in a great position. He's proved that he's got that resilience now, and the toughness to come through hard times in fights and come out winning. So yeah, Joe's just got to box smart, pick his shots, and when his opportunity comes, take it.
You mentioned kind of the resilience of Daniel, which is not something that's always been associated with him. Of course, the Joe Joyce fight and the Alexander Usyk fight. Watched you kind of get under the skin of Daniel in the face-off, Andy. It was quite nice to see from you. There's a little bit of spice to it. In all seriousness, how much does that play into? I mean, I'm sure Joseph's going to be prepared to box 12 rounds and a hard fight. But from your position as not only a coach but also as an ex-fighter, when you see a fight, I mean, not a fighter, but quit as people kind of label at Dubois. How much of that plays into your thinking, or does it not at all?
Yeah, it plays into your thinking. I have to be honest with it. There's also the Kevin Lorena fight, but I don't want to take anything away from Daniel, because he's shown in recent fights, like if there was ever a chance to quit, it was against Jarrell Miller, where he was under immense pressure. He was being talked to. Miller was talking to him the whole way through the fight. He was taking punishment early in the fight, and look what he did. He came back. And if there was ever a chance to quit, it was against Herkovich, where he was taking clean right hands, and he found a way to come through. So I don't think you can bank on that happening or think about that happening, but it has happened. Now listen, the Joyce fight, I don't call that quitting, because his eye socket was broken, and I wouldn't want to be taking those hits. And Joyce, it's just what it was at the time. You know what I mean? I don't call that quitting. Now the Usyk one, which I asked him about in the face-off, was just a bit to get under his skin, really, because, well, yeah, it is what it is. Just a bit of crack.
1 week later, out of the frying pan and into the fire. Paddy Donovan against Lewis Crocker, in a fight that I think the general consensus is that's one that people are really looking forward to on this side of the world, should we say. Big fight, Northern Ireland against the South. Paddy, even speaking to him today, you get that feeling from him that there is that little bit of edge to this big fight, a lot of pride on the line. Have you felt that in the build-up to the fight? Have you noticed a little bit of a difference in him at all?
No, I think he knows it's a big fight. I think he's very focused. He obviously knows it's a big fight, but I mean internally, subconsciously, he knows it's a big fight. What do I think? I think all of that stuff goes out to it. I don't think the guys genuinely dislike each other. I think there's a rivalry there because they want to see who's the best. And I think the prize at the end, with it being an eliminator, it's top of the bill, it's in our home country, I think that's enough to motivate the boys, yeah. So it's again, like both of these fights between Joe Dubois and Paddy and Lewis Crocker, they're 50-50 fights. Some might have Daniel Dubois a favourite, some might have Joe a favourite, some might have Crocker a favourite, some might have Paddy a favourite, but they're pick-em fights, and we can win both of them not very easily, but I can see both boys winning. But then again, there's always a chance that they might lose, and that's what it is at this level in boxing. At the highest level, the two boys are on the literally, Joe's fighting for a world title, and the winner of Paddy's fight will fight for the world title. So, the highest level of boxing, and I think you'll see that in the ring as well. I think you're going to see two cracking fights.
What are you expecting from Lewis Crocker, and what are you expecting Paddy to be able to do to kind of counteract that, I suppose? Obviously, backing Paddy to win the fight, of course. Why is that? Why do you think that Paddy emerges victorious?
Because what can Lewis really do? He's an athletic guy. He punches, has a good engine. But I don't really see how he can beat how he beats Paddy. You know, well, maybe he catches Paddy with a hook. You know, he's a big puncher. He throws mostly hooking punches. Maybe he catches Paddy switching off and without. But as long as Paddy's concentrated, boxing strong and rigid, strong and robust in his stance, mixing the power in his shots, mixing the speed of his shots, and punching at the same time as Lewis punches. I just know how hard Paddy punches. I just know how hard he punches, and I know Lewis punches hard. But it's about timing, which Manuel always told me how to knock people out. It's about timing. It's about finesse. It's not just about punching hard.
I spoke to Paddy a short while ago and spoke to him about, years gone by when I first remember him. I said to him, when he was young, and really he's still young now, and he's obviously still full of beans, but I remember you taking him around Las Vegas with Tyson and giving him that experience of those big marquee events like Emmanuel used to do with you when he was working on HBO or indeed other shows. How important is that? And it's now, surely, this fight where, amongst other things, that experience that he's had earlier in his career, you're hoping will come to the fore?
Yeah, well, he's been very close with Tyson and very close with Joe, in the dressing rooms, in the camps, almost in the corner during the fights. And it's natural for him to picture himself in that situation. And now it is his time. So when he goes to, he's fought, but when he goes to the arena, he's in the big dressing room, he's fighting at the end of the night, getting his hands wrapped. It's, he's the last fight of the night, there's a big crowd. He's gone through all of those experiences as an observer, firsthand, very close to it. Walking to the ring with Tyson or walking to the ring with Joe, those type of things. None of it's going to be new to him. It'll be new in the sense that he's in it, but it won't be new, it won't be totally alien to him. So that was what Emmanuel did to me, soon it'll be your time in here where these are. And that's what I said for Paddy. Just picture yourself, because this is where you're going to be.
You mentioned earlier about kind of using your own experiences as a fighter as well. I remember the fight that you had with Billy Joe Saunders, where there was a lot of pride within the traveller community, and I remember speaking to you about it in LA for Wilder Fury 1, and you said at the time about how there were times in the build up to that fight where maybe it did get to you slightly. Is that the sort of experience that you're looking to draw on for Paddy going into this fight?
Yeah, just another fight. That's how he has to take it. Just another fight, and forget about all the family and fans driving up the road to watch you fight. They'll be there when you win, and they'll be, you know what I mean? So but the motto I lived by when I was fighting, and I got away from sometime, was, and it's a quote from a movie, Jim Jarmusch. Did I told you this before? Ghost Dog is the movie. Forrest Whitaker. Jim Jarmusch is the director, and it's about this guy who lives in, I think it's New Jersey, in a tough neighborhood, but he lives by the way of the samurai, and every now and then he'll be up with his pigeons or doing something, as like a flash will turn up and it'll be like a quote, and the quote that I always remembered was, things of little importance should be taken seriously, and things of great importance should be taken lightly. So that's what we'll be taking into the fight with Donovan and Crocker.
Good, I like it. And you've never told me that before. It'll be interesting. I'll go back and watch it. Before we round things off, we've mentioned his name throughout this. Tyson Fury, of course, somebody that you've been extremely close with over the years. Of course, recently announced his retirement from the sport. Won't go into is he or isn't he retired, because I know that's not your place, and you know you well enough at this point.
No one knows anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't tell you anything anyway.
It's wasted hair a little bit. But let's kind of talk about the relationship that you've had with him, and obviously you've been by him for some of his biggest nights over recent years, and of course, obviously go many years back with Tyson. If it is the end, and we don't know whether or not it is, of course, kind of second guessing Tyson's seemingly not really worth. But what a tremendous career, and obviously somebody who's done an incredible amount for not only British boxing but the heavyweight division as well. You think back to those great nights with Vladimir and of course the Deontay Wilder trilogy. If it is the end, what a great career.
Yeah, you just said it. I don't have to say it. There's what can I say that hasn't been said? Just a great character and guy who was destined for greatness from the young age. There's a great story there, from birth, premature birth to being 6'9", 6'10" maybe now. Heavyweight champion of the world. So, and just a great character outside of it, entertaining everybody, so good to everybody, giving so generous with everything, with his time and his knowledge, and we've had some great times together, and we will continue to have great times together. And he's done it all. There's not much that can be said about him that hasn't been said. But an all-time great boxer, and in his prime would have probably beaten any heavyweight in history.
Including Lennox Lewis?
Probably.
I know you and Lennox, the Crocker affiliation. I asked you that in the past in one of our fans.
I remember saying, Herman Harry, but on his night, could have bet anybody.
One of the things I wanted to speak to you about with regards to Tyson, any amateur boxing aficionado will look at any youth tournament and see it dominated by travellers. It's not always the way whereby you see traveller standout amateurs then go on into the pros and go and obviously present company excluded. How much do you think that Tyson could do for that generation, the next generation of traveller boxers coming up? Obviously, you've had yourself, had Billy Joe Saunders, but you've had the heavyweight champion of the world. Have you seen that? Do you experience that kind of? I mean, it's always a very blossoming boxing community, but having Tyson at the top of the sport, do you feel like there will be that knock-on effect for the traveller community?
I don't. To be honest with you, I thought it would. I thought myself and Billy Joe, Tyson would lead to a generation of travelling and gypsy boxers. When you saw the like, Paddy is flying the flag. Yeah. Willie Hutchison. Dennis McCann, and we see what happened with him, which is further to my point. Hobie Price. I think you have to be a champion. You have to have something special inside, as like Emmanuel said. Not the fact that it doesn't matter about your ethnicity. It's about the person inside, and I don't know, the gypsy and traveller life. I don't know if it's the best. I think underage is great, and they dominate because the reason they dominate is because they're physically more mature, and they're grown. They're like men, they're boys and children, and they're like men. They're treated like men, and they act like men. And for them to lose to a little kid from the street, from the housing estate, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Because I'm a grown man. I'm going to punch the head off you. That's the travel attitude. You know what I mean? Whereas they get to 18. And all those physical advantages have kind of leveled out. The normal boys are coming up and getting stronger as well, and then that's when they seem to fade away. So they're so they can turn pro, and they'll do well and they get to a certain level until they really have to want it and really have to dig in and really have to show what it. You know what I mean? That's when I think all the traveller. Whatever ethnicity you are, black, white, Asian, doesn't really matter. I think to be a champion, it has to come from within. You have to have the talent and determination, but you have to all that has to come from within.
And final question on Tyson Fury. You mentioned there he's done it all seemingly in the sport. Hasn't boxed Anthony Joshua, which of course Tyson I'm sure is more than comfortable with his career up to this point, as I'm sure Anthony Joshua is as well. The British boxing public, of which I consider myself a part of, really wants to see that fight. Is that a shame for the sport if it doesn't happen? Obviously not attributing anything on either side, but it's a fight it is the fight that we haven't had of this generation. I
know, but to be honest with you, do you really want to see it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I do. for either of them. I think they've both done so well in boxing. You know, if they decided to walk away, I wouldn't miss them not fighting. I wouldn't think, I wish they would have saw them fight. If they do fight, then it's going to be a big spectacle, isn't it? Because of the two people and two names involved. I'd like to see them come back, both of them, fight on the same show, get a win each. No, against a decent level of opposition, get people excited again. It's a bit of a, you know, for me, two guys coming off a loss, going for, you know, well, listen, they fight each other, they're coming off a loss, they fight each other. See, you kind of have this Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, in my mind anyway. Whoever wins it, that's the last fight. Do you know what I mean? And then, but probably the winner will want to go on and fight somebody else. Challenge Usyk. Or challenge Joe for his title. We'll see.
Tyson and Joe?
Nah, never.
I didn't think so.
Never.
Andy, always a real pleasure. Thanks very much for having Boxing News over to Dublin.
Yeah,
all the
anytime.
best on February the 22nd and, of course, on March the 1st with Paddy Donovan. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you.
6'9", switch hitting, counter punching banger. Who can't be touched, can't move, can't be rocked, can't be stopped. I'm a sailor!